the first step is inviting it. I like to think of my soul as the first impulse of the creator. So the first part of who this is that was created. And it lives in that realm all the time. But it's also the eternal part. So if you think about, where am I going when I drop this body? Your soul body, it has a body. It has a form, not with flesh and blood, but it has a form. So first step is to invite that forward in your consciousness. Most people have never consciously had that experience, although I think everybody has that experience all the time. You just may not have defined it or acknowledged it. It's like the person you pass in the grocery store every day. You notice them, but they go to the same grocery store, and maybe they even live in your neighborhood, but you don't really know them. But maybe one day you stop and have a chat, or they're in line behind you.
As we begin our conversation, I've been reflecting on your extensive journey, Catherine, from earning an advanced degree in theology and spiritual science to creating works that resonate deeply with spiritual seekers and, I would imagine, the broader public. Your path is rich with both academic and experiential wisdom. And your award-winning documentary, The Great Mystery, and your spiritually uplifting album, The Voice of the Stillness, reflects a profound connection with the divine and a commitment to sharing that with others. But beyond your accomplishments, what really stood out for me is the essence of your work in terms of you're helping others transcend the limitations of physical existence and guiding them towards a deeper connection with their soul. And it seems to me that you've dedicated your life to exploring the spiritual dimensions of our human experience. So today, I would really love to unpack the wisdom you've gathered over the years, your insights into spiritual transformation, and the practices that allow us to access this deeper knowledge within ourselves. Your academic and spiritual training really spans diverse fields from theology to spiritual psychology, and your work reflects a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern understanding. That's a powerful combination. What first drew you to this deep exploration of the soul and the spirit? Was there an experience or a defining moment or a rising realization in your life that set your feet upon this path?
Yes, there was a defining moment that happened when I was very young. And when I was very young, I was about 5. I was asking myself questions because I just had this strange, odd feeling like this was a strange place to be. I didn't understand it. I was trying to make sense of what life was, what it was for. And I was asking myself those questions really young. And the other thing that happened was that I was 5 also, and I was walking in the woods. My family, for the first time, let me walk in the woods by myself. So I didn't have people's voices in my head or their energy around me. So I let myself just fly. I was looking up through the canopy of trees and leaves and into the sky and the clouds. I said to myself, I don't think this is real. It's beautiful, but this doesn't look real to me. I want to pull back the curtain. I want to pull back the sky. I want to pull back the clouds. I want to know what's behind it all. What's behind this? I had this strange sense that what I was seeing was a projection from somewhere else, and I wanted to know what that somewhere else is and was. And so as I stood there, I saw the sky part. And behind that sky in the middle of the day, I saw the stars, the universe stretched out in front of me. And what was even more impactful was that I heard it. So I heard what I know now can be called the celestial melodies, can be called the sound current, the nam, the nad. Shabda yoga teaches the sound of all creation. And I heard it for a moment. And what I thought as a 5-year-old was I thought it was the stars singing to each other. And then I could see as if their songs to each other through the vast universe was like a giant matrix of sound and light. And that's when I knew that really was reality. That's really what I wanted to know about in my life. And that was the adventure I wanted to take.
Was that an experience where you felt most connected to your sense of soul?
I wanted to know, again, I'm going back to my 5-year-old self, which is always present. Wanted to know at that time what my place in all that was. So how do I fit into this? Later in life, as I learned the vocabulary and the semantics of metaphysics and theology. As I got older, I would call that the soul. The part of me that was bigger than my physical life, because it wasn't really my physical life that was fitting into what I was experiencing. Although now I know it certainly does. But at that time, I felt beyond my physical life, sort of into where I had come from. And I knew that, and I say knew because I was trying to put it all in some context because there were no parents. The church I went to didn't have a context for all of this. There was no place I could go to learn as a child what a way to articulate all this, or I just had to experience it and live with it silently and myself. But I also knew that walking through life, there was way more than than the day-to-day eating, going to school, cleaning my room, all those things you do as a kid. And that was a template on top of the tip of the iceberg, and underneath was this existence that I was most interested in and felt really more a part of.
Those are what I call first self activities, whereby we're in this temporary appearance, in this physical body, and this is our first self experience. But there is something more where you can look at all those things, like in the forest, and go, is this an illusion or is it real? And how do you then discern between what is illusion and what is real? You wanted to see beyond the veil. So there was something organizing and propelling your soul to go on that journey. You studied theology, you studied spiritual science extensively. Let me ask you, how do you see these disciplines complementing each other?
We live in, as you said, this physical body, and we have this brain, our intellectual self. We have our imagination, we have our emotions, we have our unconscious, subconscious. So part of the spiritual path, I believe, is mastering yourself. Because I think the world is designed, and by design, to pull us out of our connection with our soul and spirit. So the ancient disciplines, none of this is new. Even looking at spirit from a scientific point of view, none of it is new. But how do you use this vehicle, all the parts of our consciousness that are also vehicles, to keep yourself focused on expanding your connection with your soul and your spirit so that your awareness is always present, but remembering it is what we can work on. Just as when I was a 5-year-old and I had a glimmer of something beyond myself, as I grew up and learned to speak and words and vocabulary and languages, then I had a mechanism to talk and articulate to myself what my experiences were, which deepens them and enriches them, and also helps focus me on a path towards a greater awareness, awakening of my soul and spirit. I don't see much interest in life without the foundation of soul, the awareness of something bigger with every step, which makes it holy and sacred. It gives you a reverence and a wholeness way beyond psychology. And way beyond, I think, what science has really defined. And because my doctorate's in spiritual science, what I learned in that program was to have a hypothesis of what are the things that can deepen my experience with soul. I used loving as my doctoral thesis, but loving soul, what are those techniques or ways of life that will deepen that experience and let me hold it? Because I think we all have had these incredible transcendent spiritual experiences, whether you define them that way for yourself or not. But to hold them, that's the real challenge. Because then your whole vibrational level, your whole vibe, as the young people say, your vibe has to rise to meet it. So you have to be able to hold in this quantum space of this refined vibrational frequency to hold that place where creation is made from formlessness to form. And then expand your awareness into the place of formlessness where you have no edges. You have only expansiveness and oneness, where you're still individual. Some people get scared. Oh, if I go into oneness, I'm going to lose myself. No, you don't. You don't lose yourself. You become more of yourself, and then you know it. So to be a spiritual scientist, you look at those things that work, that help you, that you can actually measure. Here's my hypothesis. If I sit down for 5 minutes a day in silence and stillness, I chant one of the ancient names for the creator, whatever words you want to use for God, divinity, I chant that name. Will it bring me an experience of the creator? That's my hypothesis. I practice it and then I measure it. It's subjective measurement, like a social science degree might be subjective measurement, but you can still measure it from 1 to 10. And you do it over time because you can have a bad day, right? You can have a day where you've got so much to do, your mind just keeps you in your mind. So you do it over time and then you just watch your progression, and maybe that doesn't work for you and you throw out your hypothesis and you try something else. Maybe it's a walk in the woods. And in that moment in the walk in the woods, you feel that expansiveness that's beyond you. And then you go, oh, my spiritual practice for now is a walk in the woods. Now, can I do that every day? Except maybe when it's a blizzard out or something. But even then, I was out in the freezing cold this morning, feeding horses and walking around. That's one of my spiritual practices because it brings me way beyond myself and beyond my mind. My mind gets quiet when I'm out with my horses, feeding them. It's one of my spiritual practices. So what spiritual practices can you use to focus yourself? And here's the key, I think. And I did this by writing it down. Write down your transcendent experience. This helps to open your awareness. The first few years that I did this, after sitting down in spiritual exercise or meditation, I felt like I was making it up. I don't know what that was. I was quiet for 10 minutes, for a half hour, for 2.5 hours. Then I just started writing things down and I thought, I'm just making this up. I don't really know what happened. I don't remember anything. And it's difficult at first if you haven't done it because in the spiritual realms, we don't have reference points. We have no reference points. It's spiritual realms. We live in the physical material world. But over time, a person will start to recognize the topography, the geography, the sounds, the sights of the soul realms. And they've been written about throughout history. You can read them in many of in the Vedas, but you need the experience yourself. Have it for yourself. You don't need to go to a scripture. Have it for yourself. You are the scripture. You're alive in that. And you write it down, and over time, you will start to recognize those places. And then as you go there, the spiritual science process is repeatable, measurable, and then you can use it for yourself to expand your awareness.
We have to be able to write and read our own scripts and not outsource it to extras. We're the main star in our own movie, in a sense, but in connection with something much, much higher. Where is the boundary between me and not me? What holds all the planets together? What holds all those galaxies together where there's no gravity? We don't really know.
No, but you can experience it. I experience it as sound.
That's one of the core themes in your work, is the idea that maybe it's not an idea, is the experience that you have where you can cultivate a direct relationship with your soul, listening to its wisdom for guidance. And for many, I think that's an extraordinary concept. And also, for many, it can seem abstract or distant. So for the audience, how do you define hearing the voice of the soul? And what does that process look like?
The first step is inviting it. I like to think of my soul as the first impulse of the creator, right? So the first part of who this is that was created. And it lives in that realm all the time, but it's also the eternal part. So if you think about, where am I going when I drop this body? Your soul body, it has a body. It has a form, not with flesh and blood, but it has a form. So first step is to invite that forward in your consciousness. Most people have never consciously had that experience, although I think everybody has that experience all the time. You just may not have defined it or acknowledged it. It's like the person you pass in the grocery store every day. You notice them, but they go to the same grocery store and maybe they even live in your neighborhood, but you don't really know them. But maybe one day you stop and have a chat, or they're in line behind you. Now you know them and you start to say hi to them when you see them in the grocery store, or on your street, or wherever. It's like that with your soul. You may have just noticed it, but not really. It's just there. And one day you can invite it. Hey, do I have a soul? If I have a soul, I'm inviting you in. I want to see you and hear you in a way that I can understand. That relationship grows over time. You become familiar with it. My experience, anyway, was it holds back until it's welcomed because it's never going to intrude. In the spiritual life, there's no intrusion. Although people may have had an experience where all of a sudden something dangerous happens and you hear a voice calling you. For example, one time I was driving, there was a flood where I live. I was driving back home from another part of town. I had driven to a rental property to help bail the basement out of water. And I'm driving home at 11:30 at night. I drive through the center of town and it was like a party outside. People were out in the rain. We don't get a lot of rain here in Boulder, Colorado. Yeah. And I drive the way home, going out to the countryside where I live. And all of a sudden I hear this, Catherine, wake up. And I was in a flood. My mind was thinking about how festive this torrential rainstorm was. I was in a flood and I have a truck, which I have another car too, but I happened to be driving my truck. Thank goodness, because the water was over the hood. And then I went to grab my phone, like Pavlov's dog, and I kept getting the instructions. Put your phone down, roll your window down to the driver's side in case you have to get out. Put your hands on the wheel. It was just a list of instructions. Then a miracle happened. I was like, Lord, part these waters. And I kept driving. The next day, I look at the paper, and right where I was, it was a river that had never been there before. Somebody in a car got pushed down the river. I was driving there at 11:30 at night. They were driving at midnight. They got pushed down the river and died. Then somebody else, the car flipped in that river that wasn't there before. They were saved, but they were in their car in an airspace for 5 hours while the rescue team. So I'd driven through that. That to me was my soul.
And that's a great story. For those who struggle to feel a connection with their soul, you talk about inviting it in. Is there a common resistance people face when attempting to listen inwardly? And if so, how can they overcome it?
That's such a great question. I would say yes and no. There are people that have no resistance. They want to know their soul. They want to know what's sacred. They want to know the creator. They want to go to those heights. And there are some people that are afraid of losing themselves, are afraid of anything that they can't feel, see, touch, and hear that's tangible. So I think doubt gets in the way, hesitation gets in the way, concern on one end of the spectrum, abject terror on the other side of the spectrum. Those things can get in the way for some people, not for everyone. So I was telling a friend of mine 45 years ago about the sound current, and she goes, "Does it sound like this?" She got it immediately. It took me years to really get it. She got it immediately. She had no resistance. But one of the things that I do for myself and different is if I want to expand and I'm up against a ceiling that I can't break or I can't push or a closed door, then I sit down. I like paper and pen and I write down, how am I limiting myself? Where am I limiting myself? What are limiting beliefs? It's usually limiting beliefs. That's almost always what it is. Almost always. They're tricky because they seem real. They just seem real. And a lot of times we've been living with them our whole lives. So you have to pull back the curtain on that too and take a real bold, honest look at yourself and go, where am I limiting myself? What is the belief? Then give it to yourself and write it down. And on the other side of the page, what's the antidote? If I go, oh, I've been looking at lately, I've come up against in the physical world a level of what I call it poverty consciousness or financial limitation, which I thought I was done with. But I found another level of it because as we're mastering ourselves, things cycle. It's like a cyclical or never a straight line, come back around to the same issue, although it might be a little bit higher. So I came across that issue and then I went, really? I've gone through this years ago. Okay, what's my limiting belief? My limiting belief is I have to be in solidarity with people that don't have as much as me. My limiting belief is I'm not worthy. It usually comes down to worthiness. I'm not worthy of that kind of prosperity and thriving that much in my life. On the other side, what's the antidote? The first thing I do is go to my soul, which has no limitations and lives in a realm of everything. There's no need. And I feel that field of energy. So I enter into the field of energy of prosperity, abundance, limitlessness. All is provided, feeling full. Then I bring that field of energy that comes from that soul level into this life. So I work on the mental, unconscious, subconscious, emotional level because we're human here, at the same time bringing in that refined soulic energy into that issue that I'm facing. Sometimes I don't have to slog through the psychological part. Sometimes the grace of that soulic energy just clears it up and brings it in. And sometimes I have to slog through those thoughts. Oh, I'm not worthy. Somehow I have to be in solidarity with people that have less than me. Somehow I can't be of service if I'm living in this world of prosperity. None of this is rational, but I'm holding on to it. And then the antidote, I can't help anybody if I'm poor. I can't be great service if I'm struggling financially. And I start to use the rational mind to antidote the irrational belief. And I work on both levels. That's what works for me. Then I use my imagination in that a lot of people talk about manifestation, but I use my imagination. So what's life like? How do I live as if now I'm living in a higher level of prosperity? And I walk every day and I'm already done that. It's done. I am living that. I have that. There's a lot of ways of self-mastery here we're talking about. But I always go to the soul first to bring that field of energy because that's what's real. And like a tuning fork, then my body, mind, emotions will start to resonate on that higher level of prosperous, energetic, vibrational.
You engender a compatibility of alignment with that resonance.
Well said. Yes. And you just become that. We don't get what we want, we get what we are. I'm sure you've heard that before. So that's how I work with myself. When things come up that you mentioned, how do people that are hesitant or are afraid of it? There's a few steps there. But I always go to that soul level, whether I have a tangible experience that holds the most beautiful, expanded, real, honest place of existence. That's my true existence.
You emphasize daily spiritual practice. Why is consistency so important in developing soul awareness?
It builds, and you start to almost drill through your karma. You drill through your hesitations. You just open that door a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. The light shines in more brightly. So when you first start, it may be a pinhole, but when you do it consistently, just if you go to the gym, if you're doing curls, you want a stronger arm, stronger biceps, and you do that once, that does nothing. You do it every day or even 3 times a week. Now you're starting over time to build that muscle. It's the same thing with a spiritual practice. You're starting to build that muscle because remember, we're living in the physical world, which is designed to take us out of this awareness, designed intentionally by something. If we can do it here on planet Earth with all its hurdles and craziness and challenges and diseases and grouchy people and traffic, everything, the news, we can do it here and really find that place of center. We're strong.
Absolutely. You can walk into a gym and there may be a load on that bar. It's not the fact that you can't lift it. You haven't built the muscle yet. That's why consistency is important.
You got it. You got it. Exactly.
I I want to touch on the shadow. When I look at my garden, I see some of the plants grow in the sunlight and others remain in shadow. Those plants in shadow adapt and change. And I see that part of our soul's purpose can become hidden or transformed by our shadow aspects, or what I call the descent. But those shadow elements, they're not simply obstacles. The treasure can be found in the cave. They hold the keys to our deepest gifts. What aspects of your authentic self do you feel have been hidden in shadow?
I think 50% of our work is healing, and 50% of our work as humans on a spiritual path or on a path of growth or path of being the best you can be is just going right into the heart of God and living there. So I've worked to shine a light on all the places that what I call the false self. And I want to bring those places. Yes, there are many plants that grow that are shade-loving plants. They love the shade. The sun's too much for them. I've worked to bring whatever parts of me have been isolated or somehow shaved off and put in a corner, or my false self part, to bring them into the light. Not to change them, but to accept them. For example, growing up, I was a painfully shy person. I could not speak and I barely spoke to people. It was odd. Like I never really talked. So there was a part of me, I don't know that I can analyze it. I didn't need to analyze every part of it. But what I did want to do is bring that part back into wholeness that kind of got pushed off to the side and then didn't allow me full expression. Now I'm so expressive, I made an album. So I really changed all of that. It's personal. I had something to say. I'm talking to you. I have something to say. Gone from not expressing at all to being a fully self-expressive, I think, person. So I worked to shine a light on that and bring that forward. How it helped me is the process of doing that. So not really that shy person. That shy little person was not a very happy person. It wasn't full and fully living life. It was off in a corner. And there's a reason for that growing up. I won't go into that, but certain dynamics of the family, the way it was, I wasn't really allowed to talk and I wasn't really la 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 la.
But you found gifts and strengths that were furtive or hidden within those shadow aspects.
The strength was in learning to bring that part that had been off to the side and ignored back into the fullness of my consciousness. And how to do that. That took a lot of strength. It took acceptance. I remember reading when I was like 16, a book on how to have conversations. I didn't know how to have a conversation with another human being. I had to learn it because I had never done it, even in school. I had never done it. I remember in school, I would write my questions for the teacher. This is how shy I was and how unable to speak I was. I would write my questions on a piece of paper, give it to my girlfriend, and have her ask the questions because I couldn't talk. I just couldn't. It was the process of going, what do I need to do? I need to learn how to have a conversation and reading a book about it. Then I remember the first time, I don't remember the person, but I remember the first time going, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to try. Walk up and I'm going to ask open-ended questions, the things I learned in the book. And I'm going to listen and I'm going to respond. Now that seems so simple now, but it wasn't for me back then. So it wasn't the part of me that was so shy and retiring and scared to talk to people. It was the learning how to come out of that. Once I learned how to come out of that, then I learned the techniques to come out of a lot of things, or where I felt like I wanted to be a bigger human or a better human. Then I had steps. Nobody taught me those steps. I just figured them out. I had steps and I went, I can do this. I can do this. And I'll figure out the steps and then I will practice the steps and it'll get better over time. Like the first person was really, I'm going to have a conversation. And then I remember going, I've got to talk to a teacher. Oh, I knew that I wanted to pass the Constitution test. Everybody in 8th grade had to learn about the United States Constitution and take a test. It was a nationwide thing. I had questions that only a teacher could answer. So I had to go now we're in junior high. I had to go, okay, I got to ask the teacher. I got to raise my hand. And my friend wasn't in my class anymore because now I was in junior high, not grade school. So yeah, that was a big one. And I did that. I didn't get a perfect score on a constitution test, but I only missed 2 questions. I had a
You,
big score.
you built the muscle, you lifted the bar.
I lifted the bar and then I knew how to do that. And so, like what you're saying, I don't work with that. Like, I see a tangible value in the false self, in the shadow self. I don't work with myself like that. I'm not saying that's not a very valid way to do it. Just never have. I want all those parts of me that may have been fragmented off from whatever reason, some childhood dynamic or a trauma or something, and I want to bring him back into the fold. I want to bring him back into the full light of my consciousness. Yeah, I've spent concerted, focused time bringing into awareness all those parts and bringing a relationship with them. What do you need? So I think those parts, I studied with a man named Marshall Rosenberg. He's passed now, but he did amazing work. He was a clinical psychologist and went into mental institutions and got people out, got people that were medication didn't work with them. They'd been institutionalized for a long time. And he found the key, which was looking at the consciousness, looking inside and finding out what are the needs that aren't being met. And I don't mean like needs for shelter, food, water, physical, but personal needs that make us who we are. So that we each have needs that make us who we are. Like, for example, I am a creative person. I have to be creative. That's a need that is integral into who I am. Some people have a need for routine. You might see them go into the military or into a corporate job. They just need that. That's important. You're not going to change that. That's who they are.
It's also about being able to assay what the hidden cry is in a person, because that's usually in the unconscious.
Yes.
So when you're trying to
Yes.
measure, not judge, but assay, you're trying to establish what is the hidden cry in that person. Yeah.
Cry is the symptom of the need. So when you go into the need, it's pretty neutral. There's not
Right.
usually an emotional component to it.
Yeah.
That does come later, and then you have to slog through that. But if you go to the need that's not being met,
How do you distinguish between these elements that need integration as distinct from transformation?
okay. I have a technique for that I love. And I'm just glad you asked it because I love to share it. So I call it the campfire, okay? A Gestalt technique. So what I have done is I've pulled my consciousness apart into its parts. And in my mind's imagination, I mock up a sanctuary. For me, it's a forest with a campfire. Then I invite the parts of me, the parts of my consciousness that want a relationship in that moment or want to talk or have a need that needs to be met, whatever. And then I just sit and be quiet and I let them come forward in a body. For example, the part of my consciousness that's been coming forward in my campfire lately is myself at 14. So you might have the child within or the teenager within, what I call the body wisdom. So it's a part of my consciousness that runs this body. And I have a few things I have to heal physically right now. So I'm talking to that to help me. What do I need physically? Like, I've lost some of my eyesight lately. Crazy overnight. Not a lot the medical world can do about it. Okay, fine. I'm going to heal it myself. Let's medical body wisdom come forward. My soul come forward. This conscious self, my creative part. And then I sit around the campfire and I've got, who needs to talk? I'm here to listen. And sometimes they want to hear me. And what I have to say is, hey, I've got this eye issue going on. I don't want it to get worse. In fact, I want it to heal. Who can tell me in my consciousness how I heal this and what do I do? What can we do? Let's kick in the healing process. And my eyes have gotten better. They've got a ways to go. 14-year-old, what's going on with you? It showed up. What do you need? I always ask, what do I need? And then I do this a couple times a week. Just keep checking in, keep this mastery of myself going, keep these relationships with parts of my consciousness alive, and get this inner alignment and cooperation. When you do that, you can do anything. You can do anything in this life. anything. You can heal any relationship. You can heal your body. You can see the mysteries of the universe. We're all meant to live like this, fully awake, fully aware, completely healed, integrated in all parts of our consciousness, including the shadow side or the false self, those parts, and all in harmony. This is a beautiful life then. Life becomes so beautiful and magic. And also, that's when the overflow of that beauty starts to touch others. Not necessarily that you have to go out and I'm going to go fix this and that or save that. No, it's more that you hold in an energy of divinity and wholeness and peace and beauty that, like a tuning fork, those around you just start to resonate in that highest vibration.
You are the tuning fork.
Exactly.
You are that beacon of transmission via the frequency and energy that you emit. That's what causes attraction and resonance. Today's world, which is complex, fast-paced, many people and nations are seeking peace, but many don't know how to find it. Your work, from what I can glean, integrates ancient sacred sounds and meditation and other spiritual practice. These are things that have stood the test of time, but
Yeah.
modern life can feel at odds with these timeless traditions. My question is, how do you help people integrate these ancient practices into a modern, often chaotic lifestyle?
Each person has to decide, that's the first step, that you want to find something deep within you that transcends your physical life and connects you with your soul and your spirit. First step is making a decision and choosing that. When the student is ready, the teacher comes as a famous statement. Those things that will help each person to deepen their connection with their soul and the spirit will start to come. In my practice and in what I have presented or created for people, I have 5 ancient practices that I've recorded. Each one is different every day. The first step is invoking it, inviting spirit, inviting your soul. Second step, being quiet and listening. I've been collecting inspirational teachings from some of the great spiritual teachers of history and reading something they had to say. And then I'll work with my mind and emotions by an affirmation and repeating it. Then I can use that if my mind goes off into the news or something, I can just bring myself back to an uplifting statement and use that as a technique. I like practicing the sound, the ancient sounds. And Sanskrit, we have these bija mantras, these mantras that have a vibrational frequency. They are so ancient. They have stood the test of times, like you've said, and just listening them starts to tune yourself. So we are a tuning fork, and we have to keep our tuning fork tuned. And I do a guided meditation for people with stillness, which is plain quiet. So I present that with people because people have asked me that same question. So I decided to put something together like that. And I did in a subscription program. But for yourself, I would say each person, you're probably doing those things already. You just need to be aware of what they are, whether it's a walk with your dog down the street and your mind just gets quiet, or it's a couple of minutes. The best thing is, of course, sitting down in meditation or spiritual exercise, what I call them, and chanting one of the ancient spiritual names of God or of divinity. And I like to use the Hu chant, H-U. It's a Sufi chant. Sufi is an esoteric sect of Islam. It really holds a vibration of creation, of where formlessness goes into form, Hu or Hu. And you can just put your attention on that and chant it inwardly. If your mind starts telling you things and monkey mind, start chanting a tone. Any tone will do. Om is fine. The word God is fine. I spent some months using the word love so I could have that vibration. I don't mean romantic love, the love of caring and well-being and compassion. And I wanted that vibration, so I started chanting that inwardly and listening, letting love take me where love wanted to go by intoning that word. So I would start to become that vibratory frequency and then paying attention and where was that letting me go? And then I started seeing these acts of kindness and caring everywhere I went. Just open that up. So you can use different words that mean something to you to keep your mind focused and then be quiet and listen. There's the ancient techniques where you put your attention on your third eye, this energy center, and also here at the 10th door. These are open chakras that will take your consciousness out through your physical body and through the mind, the emotions, the unconscious, subconscious, through what's called the void in metaphysical terms. There's a channel in the void. There's the great mirror there. This is all real metaphysical stuff. It's nothing new. It's been out there for 1,000 years. The interesting thing when you brought up the shadow self is when you're practicing meditation and you go up through the levels of consciousness and you hit that cosmic mirror, okay, it reflects yourself back to you. So part of what I was saying, I've taken a lot of time to shine a light on parts of me that have been separated. In the meditation process, that actually happens to you without actually necessarily asking for it. But there's a cosmic mirror and it reflects back yourself. Another saying is it takes great courage to see the face of God because first you have to see your own face. What that means metaphysically is you've hit the cosmic mirror going through levels of consciousness and it's reflected back all parts of you. And you look at all parts of yourself, shining a light on them, not that they have to change, but in acceptance. And then the door opens even greater for you to go up into the levels of what are called the soul realms. There are 7 realms in consciousness on the lower levels before soul, cosmic mirror. Then you go up into the 33 levels of soul. I haven't gotten that high, so I can't tell you exactly how many levels there are. But you start going up through the levels of soul, and there are no physical reference points there. So, yes, you can do it yourself. When you get up here, it is a shortcut to have a spiritual teacher.
I appreciate it's a very big subject, maybe for another time. You touched on sound and meditation. So there's 2 questions that come up. One of them, and you may have covered some of this already, but one of them is, how does sound play a role in spiritual healing? And what makes ancient sacred sound so powerful? That's the first question. The second part of the question is, what is the biggest misconception people have about meditation?
I'll start with that one first. The biggest misconception of meditation is that you have to shut off your mind. No, you don't. That's almost impossible. And people fail and they've come to me, I can't shut off my mind. And like, don't shut off your mind. No, your mind's not meant to be shut off. The more you try to shut off your mind, the louder it seems to get, at least in my experience. But you can transcend your mind. That's why I like mantra meditations, using a sacred tone, like the hue or the om. My preference is the hue. I like hue because it has like a tuning fork. I wish I had my tuning forks here. I love the tuning forks. But if you hit a tuning fork that has a sound G and then you use the sound of hue, it resonates. That's why you use an ancient mantra. And there are these ancient, what's called bija mantras, seed mantras. They hold a vibratory frequency. In classic Northern Indian music, it's called the sargam. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. Each have a vibration. They correspond with your chakras. Now we're getting metaphysical, but this is ancient stuff. They each have a sound. Let's say my heart is really closed. Somebody's groused at me. It got to me. It disturbed me and my heart closed. I might want to chant ma. Ma resonates at the heart. Just ma. Hum. The mother comes from that. Mare, the sea comes from that. It's just so nurturing. And it doesn't take long. I don't have to analyze what they did or how I reacted to it, how I got triggered. It's just hum the ma. It's so simple. That's why we want to do that. Hue goes way through the 10th door of the chakra up into creation. So I want that up there and I can start to resonate and lift up to that and just listen. My mind starts to intrude again. Think about the grocery list or what I got to do next or whatever. Start chanting the ma if I want my heart open. You if I want to go up into the higher realms. Look around and what do you do up there? What are you doing now? You've transcended your body. You just become one with everything and listen and you bask in it.
Huge subject, sound. Those kinds of resonances, they're so compatible with the frequency of the organs.
Not everybody will hear the sound currents. So if you're kinesthetic, meaning you feel things more, you'll feel it. You might feel it like a soft breeze. If you're visual, you might see it. If you're auditory, you might hear it. And then you get into the realms that they call it unstruck sound. It's total silence, except it's not. It's a paradox and it's impossible to explain. But it's not like everything has the sound of a violin or a flute. It can be so much more refined. So we're saying sound, and yet it might be sound that is also silent. Here we get into the ineffable, where there aren't really a lot of words. Yeah, I wanted to say that. The sound of the organs. Okay, so I had cancer at one part in my life. 3 different times. One time it was over, supposedly, and I kept hearing it. I kept hearing something buzzing, not very pleasant, and it wouldn't go away. So I called my doctor and I said, I have a recurrence. And she's, no, you don't. You're just afraid. You got through this, but you're just afraid. And don't worry. You've had so much radiation. You don't have it. And they blew me off. That sound, I just kept hearing that sound. I went and got an MRI. It was clear. Months later, I went to an urgent care and I saw this doctor and I went like this. I am begging you for another MRI. I am begging you. And I said it just like that. And he said, we're just urgent care. We don't do that. I'm like, seriously, I am begging you. I'm on my knees. And he goes, okay. I had another tumor. I had heard it before it showed up on the tests. Although they went back to the months ago MRI, they went back and they found it. So they caught it early. Another 8 weeks of radiation got rid of it. But then I started listening to the different organs. And I thought, if that cancer had a sound and a vibration, so the vibration that it had was dissonant and jagged. It didn't have harmony. It wasn't beautiful. It was sick. It was a part of me that was disturbed, had dis-ease, and the sound was like that. The sound and the feel of the sound. Later, I went back and I went, well, if that had sound, then all my organs must have sound. Then I started listening to make sure they were all operating right. So I started listening to the sound of the liver, the sound of the heart. I listen to the sound of the heart a lot. That is the way I start with meditation. Listen to the sound, feel it. Do-do, do-do. We have our own sound current right in here. So one of the things I do, I'll scan my body with my ears. As a figure of speech, it's not quite like that. It's so subtle, but you can make it not subtle. If you go to a symphony, first time you've ever been to a symphony, you've probably not really heard, you can't really identify the sound of an oboe. You can't really identify the sound of a trumpet. You can't identify the sound of a bass or the timpani. But if you keep going to the symphony, look over here at the sound of the bass, look over here at the sound of the oboe. Pretty soon you'll distinguish them. It's like that in the sounds of your body. You're the only one who's ever asked me that, and you're the only one who I have ever told about this.
When you're speaking to the medical profession, you're speaking to a mechanic, and you are the gardener. You need both, because the mechanics are the ones who will fix things. And it's, how do I fix this, or fix me? But you need the gardeners as well. When I was in hospital, the surgeon who fixed me, great, got me to a point of homeostasis. But then I needed the nurses, I needed the gardeners to come and take care of me, to do all the support work. But the thing is, I needed to tend to my inner garden. And that needed an awareness, an intuitive awareness, that I needed to be able to listen to the whispers in my ear and the vibrations in my mind. When I did that, I was able to be very skilled in terms of, oh, I need to cultivate the soil for these skills to take root and manifest themselves. I can't just rely on the mechanic. So what I see you were doing was that you were responding to your inner garden. It was telling you something, because gardens are unpredictable. They're subject to weather. They're subject to the wind, the snow, depending on where you live, the heat, the shadow, the sunlight. So you have to develop the awareness to be able to tend to your inner garden. Many people have a very mechanical view, or a Newtonian Cartesian reductionist view, whereby it's fix me, or how do I fix this? Granted, you need that, but you also need to be a good gardener.
Yeah, exactly. I love that, because I live on a farm.
What are the beautiful messages in your teachings is the idea that we're already loved, adored, and supported. Many people struggle with that belief because they feel disconnected or unworthy or lost. But you suggest that by loving the universe, and funnily enough, if you rearrange the letters in universe by anagram, it's ever in us. But that's another thing. But by loving the universe, we come to know that we are love itself. What does it truly mean to know you are the spirit of love?
I'm still working on that.
Me too.
I'm still growing in that. I'm still inviting that in. I'm still meditating on that, contemplating that. The place I've gotten to it. And by the way, none of that I've talked to you about are my teachings. I'm just a student in all of this. And these teachings are ancient and you find them everywhere when you start to look. But the place I've gotten is of when you embody loving as best you can. It's total freedom and it's complete liberation. Freedom to express yourself, freedom to be who you are, freedom to know what existence is, liberating yourself from cause and effect or the karma that you've came in, liberating yourself to have fun and be with people and enjoy them and let them enjoy you. It's this miraculous sort of, not that there aren't still slings and arrows and hurdles, but when they come, you're so neutral about them and love them for what they bring you. Because every challenge I've found in life has brought me something to learn, grow, and expand. I just don't look at anything as hard anymore. I just look at it as another way to learn and expand.
What shifts when a person moves from seeking love to recognizing they are love?
When that shift, you recognize that you are everything. Oh boy, that's a question. I don't know what that shift is. Part of it is awareness and awakening to the beingness of who you already are, who everybody is, rather than wanting to become somebody or working to become it or a mental level, although we have to work with those levels. They all cooperate, like I talked about in the sanctuary, in the campfire. Then just moving into the beingness of that. When you practice meditation or spiritual exercises, you really practice moving into the beingness of all existence, which includes who you are. So more and more, I can't hold that all the time. I'm working on that, but I hold that more and more of the time. It's duality. Ram Dass, if you know who Ram Dass is, he used to come to where I live in Boulder, Colorado. I used to go see him every year. He's passed now, of course, but he talked about his second teacher who came after Neem Karoli Baba, his first teacher. And he talked about how she was either worshiping God or God. She was in the beingness of divinity, completely absorbed in divinity as divinity herself. So there is a duality that we live in this existence. More and more as you practice spiritual exercises, meditation, and move into the beingness. This is why I don't practice Buddhist meditation, watching my mind. I don't do that. I've done that. Where I live, there's a lot of Buddhists, Vajrayana Buddhists, Tibetan Buddhists, and I probably didn't pronounce that right. So I've been around that. That was my first meditation practice, but I don't want to do that. I want to go into the beingness. Then more and more you can hold that and live your life in your beingness. And then sometimes you won't. Then you'll be outside of it, opening to it, practicing it, trying to live a good life. And then sometimes you will be in the beingness and you will hold the keys to all existence. It won't matter and you won't think it's any big deal. That's the great paradox, is that they say, another saying, when you become enlightened, you always were. And that's what it's like. It's the best
Well,
I can do.
when people say, I want to be empowered, you are empowered already. You don't know it. And there are three vectors in terms of holding on. Like you were saying, you can't hold on to that all the time because everything goes through custodial, maintenance, and expendable. Some things are relegated to the expendable ray of our contemplation. Some things we need to maintain. 99% of life is maintenance. And there is the custodial aspect. But it's a two-thirds, one-third principle. You can only be in two-thirds of it at one time. You can only be in conscious and semi-conscious. My finger has three parts. I can only move two-thirds of it. I can only move two-thirds of my arm at one time. So that two-thirds, one-third principle is at play all the time. But it's like, what are you custodial to? What do you need to maintain? And what do you need to expend? You also talk about prosperity as our true nature. How does spiritual consciousness relate to abundance in our daily lives?
It's no fun to be poor. Let's just face it. It's no fun to be poor. I've been poor. Probably a lot of people have.
Was it Mae West who said, there are problems associated with being rich and there are problems associated with being poor. I know where I want to be. Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yes. Actually, a friend of mine's father once said, there's great responsibility when you're rich, and there's great responsibility when you're poor. Better to have the responsibilities of being rich. Maybe he stole that from Mae West. But one thing I wanted to go back with a little bit is that we are multidimensional beings. So we can be aware. When you're in an incredible field of expanded awareness, you can be aware of the hue always ringing and hearing the universe in its creative force and the creator of that creative force, not as a deity, but I don't know. I can't even describe it. And your life carrying water, chopping wood, driving. I made this movie and there's a Rinpoche in it. And I was driving to university. We were asked to speak there. We were driving up into Wyoming and we were looking at the window and he goes, Catherine, there are many Buddhas in the world, meaning enlightened beings. They might be driving this garbage truck that happened to be passing us at that moment. What he told me, and I asked him about other existences, he goes, yes, the Buddhas are aware. They exist in many realms, worlds, planets, places in the universe. And I asked him, but then they have a life here, yes. And I said, are they aware of their existences in the other places they exist? He goes, they're aware of all the places they exist at once. So we can be multidimensionally aware. Now, we can bring that down a little bit. That's a great Buddha that happens to be living on the planet. But we can be aware of the spiritual realms and the refined realms of soul and be washing your dishes and doing your laundry at the same time.
Doing all the maintenance things.
Yes. So that's multidimensional
Mm,
awareness. Blows people's minds
mm.
sometimes.
Many times when people are having a shower, or they're doing the dishes, or they're doing the laundry, and then they have some kind of perception or revelation, it just comes to them. Not to everybody, but to many people I've spoken to. You've dedicated your life to spiritual teaching, filmmaking, music, and service, which I think is one of the highest principles in this universe. And you've created works that deeply touch, move, and inspire. As you reflect on your journey, I'd love to explore a little bit about the bigger picture in terms of what it means to you at this stage in your life. What do you feel is the most important lesson or lessons that you've learned and aligned to and have become part of your basic constitution on this path?
So the most important thing for me is to practice the name of God, the hue.
Mm,
That's just to practice and be present in that for wherever that leads, whatever that does. The second thing is just to be the kindest person I can be. And that seems simple, but what that means is any part of me that's not kind is in my face. I have to work with it. So it presents me with all the parts of myself. This is not a path for the faint of heart because there's work that you get to do. That 50% of working on yourself and healing yourself means I get to look at all the places that are maybe the false self, the angel over here and the devil over here. You might call that the shadow self if you want. I don't know. But I get to look at all those parts and being willing to do that. So part of what I did when I was really young, when we started way back at the beginning of this conversation, is when I was looking at what life meant, where my place was within it, and what was behind the curtain. If I pulled back, what was reality with a capital R. The other thing I asked at that time, I just asked out there into the universes, into the ethers, then what am I supposed to do here? And the answer was just grow to be the best person you can be. I didn't know what that was going to do, but it set me on a course to find out where the places where I wasn't the best person were, which still reveal themselves almost every day. I'm impatient, or I'm doubting something, or a lack of worthiness to be prosperous and share the overflow that comes up, or something. Not that I have to work with it very hard anymore, but I have to bring it into my awareness and love it and really love that and love all parts of myself. Grow it up. There's parts of me that still need to be grown up, even at my age. Grow it up and then bring down the divinity. Meet in the middle. Both work on it both ways, from divinity and soul coming there and my own conscious work into the unconscious, subconscious, but my conscious work. That's what I think this life is.
I can see that you bring in elements from the ethereal into the material. What legacy do you intend to leave through your work?
That's a great question. I've just been working on that. So on the physical level, on the practical physical level, I've actually set up a trust where my farm goes in and my investments, and it all goes into a trust, and I have trustees. There's an income involved there that actually go to serve different charities, mostly animal charities, because that's my love of my life, and horses. So there's a legacy there that I've been able to do. And I really thought it through. And rather than dissolving my assets to different people, I decided that I would keep it intact and let the income that my assets produce be managed and go to charities. There's one physical level. I'm really proud of that. I've been able to do that, and then I'm growing that as I'm still alive here. So that'll be more and more fulsome. Basically, I have more and more money to support things. Hopefully, that'll go on for 100 years, as long as the trustees do their job and pass it on to better trustees or other trustees. That's that level. And I'm glad I get to do that. And I think it's a great question that everybody needs to really think about. Whether it's giving what you've got to your children or to a charity, or setting up something like I've done that is a goose with a golden egg that'll keep producing golden eggs to support people, or whatever it is, think of your legacy. It's important. The other thing I found was that it just makes me feel really good that what I've done in this life gets to go on beyond me. In the world, the thing that I've created, the Soul and Spirit Daily Practice Program, for people that they want somewhere to start and they want it done for me. I can plug into this. I can listen to these sacred chants, to these sacred ancient teachings that have been curated by this person that I never met. And a meditation and an invocation, they have that, and I hope that goes on for a long time after me and while I'm here. That's fun because I sell hay, a special kind of hay, and this lady came out to buy some hay. She goes, "Do you sing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I listen to you." What? Came out of nowhere. So that's a legacy that I hope. My music is devotional and uplifting, and I'm working on a chant album now of the ancient chants we talked about. Then I'm working on, we only have a couple names for God in Christianity, but they have 100 names of God in Hebrew and 100 names of God in Arabic. So I'm working on doing albums of the names of God in those languages. I hope that's a legacy, that people can listen to those and be.
The beauty of that is the ripple effect. It's the understanding that a ripple doesn't just go in one direction, it goes in many directions. So you don't know who it's going to touch, move, and inspire. So that's a beautiful thing. If you could impart one key message to those who are seeking a deeper spiritual connection, what would it be?
Sit down, be quiet, and listen to your soul.
That's beautiful. What direction are you prioritizing in your life now?
I don't get up out of bed until I do my spiritual exercises. So that's number one for me. Number two is physical exercise, just keeping my body strong and young so it can go on, and good meals and that part of life. So spiritual exercise is my connection with soul and spirit, and deepening and expanding that. There's fun with that too, because I'm really wanting to hear a lot of the mysteries of the universe. So I've been calling that forward. And sometimes when you go into the spiritual realms, the soul realms, you don't have a mind there. So that intention is gone. So that sort of works and doesn't. It's hard to describe, but you don't have a mind there like we have here. So I can ask for that. Spirit will take me where spirit takes me. The physical stuff, that takes work, right? Especially when you're older. I'm older now, maintaining that. And just the love in my connections with people, my relationships, my friendships, my relationships with my family. I have a 94-year-old aunt. She's the last one of that generation. I'm going to see her at Easter, but just keeping that relationship, it's such a tender relationship for me with her. She's the embodiment of loving. Go where there's loving. I would say that for people. Go where the loving is,
Mm.
whether that's with a friend or a relative or a group. I have a group, a singing group I go to of women. These women are so kind and loving. Just show up where there's loving and kindness.
Where do people go to find out more about your work?
You can go to soulandspirit.net, and I have a lot of things there. Like my movie, you can see, there's no charge, they're complimentary. The book that I wrote is there as an ebook, it's complimentary. Or Spotify, if you want to hear my music, Catherine Corona on Spotify. The Voice of the Stillness is the name of the album. And then I have at least one other podcast on there in a playlist. And we'll put, if you do Spotify, I'll put this on there. That's it. It's real simple. soulandspirit.net or Catherine Corona on Spotify.
Throughout this conversation, you've shared a lot of profound insights. We've just really touched on them into the journey of spiritual awakening and the practice of deep soul connection and the timeless wisdom that allows us to transcend our physical limitations. From your years of study and practice to your compassionate work with those in need, we didn't touch on the work that you do with women in prisons. To me, it's a testament to the power of love and presence and transformation. You've reminded us that spirituality isn't something distant, it's within us. It's accessible through those daily practices, through awareness and a willingness to listen to the voice of the soul. I want to deeply thank you for your time and your wisdom and the light you bring into the world, the holy work you are doing, your dedication to guiding others towards spiritual connection and healing is inspiring. And I trust that those listening will walk away from this conversation with a deeper sense of possibility, purpose, and peace. It's been a real honor to speak with you. And I look forward to seeing how your work continues to touch, move, inspire, and transform lives.
Thank you, Peter. Oh, thank you. Honored to be with you.
How have you experienced the conversation today?
You are a wizard with words. You are so articulate, and I love the way you communicate. It's beautiful, it's clear. Your questions are so deep, come from such a deep place. I think the way you interview will be meaningful for people. I'm sure you've experienced that in your podcast because you just have such a way. You're just gifted.
Thank you. I received that. How have you experienced it yourself?
I just go with the flow. I don't have a lot of thoughts. I just go with the flow, with what's present there. I think spirit came real present. I could feel that vibration. It came real present because you hold that. And trust me, I haven't always felt that with hosts. They're just all in their head, or they just have never had this experience of going into soul and spirit in their own life. So they can't really go there. So the energy doesn't come in. But the energy really came today. I could feel it. I could feel my heart open. I could feel I'm getting goosebumps now just talking about it. I could experience those upper chakras open to the inspiration. That comes from beyond me. That transcends. So you were holding that. And I felt you as a battery holding in that spiritual place. That's really important for a guest to have somebody anchoring like a battery, that spiritual light, so that spirit can come in and do the speaking. And I don't mean channeling, I'm not talking about that, but like the tuning fork can come and inform what's spoken. That was very present for me.
In terms of your reflection, is I am that terminal point so that during this dialogue, you are that agency of amplification that can establish an ever-ready media where two-way traffic can flow, not between just you and me, but between
Yeah.
you and it.
Yes,
Right?
exactly. How do you do that? You just totally articulated that so perfectly. I'm amazed. That's such a gift. It's such a gift because there's not these reference points like I talked about in spirit. So to put words on it really is a gift and rare. I do my best, but you really do it brilliantly.
Thank you so much. You're welcome back anytime if you want to talk about a particular aspect or get a deeper penetration, look under the hood, get in there and see what happens.
I think the healing, listening to the sounds of the organ and how you can use the different ancient chants or the sound current to heal would be really helpful for people.
And you could
Uh,
bring your tuning forks
I
and
could bring my tuning forks.
and do
Yes.
it so it can be a
Yes.
practical podcast where people
Yes.
get a live demonstration of it.
Yes. I would love that. And I've never spoken about that.
I think it'd be
Um,
wonderful to do.
okay. Whenever you're ready, just send me an email
Well,
or whatever.
I'll send you an email with a link and then you can look at it.
This was great. And it's so funny because I'm freezing. It didn't matter. My house got noisy today. I've got work going on. So I came to a room in my barn and there's no heat in it. I had a heater on, but I turned it off because it was too loud. So I'm sitting here.
Better
and
go and
it,
put something on.
it didn't matter at all. And that's so interesting. We talk about these subjects and it's so much energy. Then the physical world just goes away.
I'm very honored and privileged to meet you and to speak with you and to have this experience because it has been an experience and it's something I'll treasure. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your
You too.
night. Glad you're well and doing this work is so important. Please see you soon.
Yeah, definitely. Bye.
Bye, Peter.